If your leads are stalling, ghosting, or endlessly thinking about it, it's actually not your price. It could actually be something else. It's actually a term called loss aversion bias. And I got this little flashcard, which is part of this cognitive biases series that talks about buyer psychology and what loss aversion is. And what this says here is that we feel the pain of losing something more strongly than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. So in other words, people are more sensitive to losses than to gains and will often take more risks to avoid losing something than they would to achieve an equivalent gain. Now, this bias was actually first introduced by behavioral economists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Now, these are PhDs that did a lot of studies, and mostly they were presenting these control and focus groups to make decisions based on things that they would gain versus things that they would lose. And whenever something was presented where the option was to lose something, most people would make decisions towards gambling or taking more risks in another option. You've probably felt this show up, or you've seen it, and you see it all over the internet where people are saying, stop losing clients, stop doing things, and then there's these negative consequences, which actually drives you to pay attention. It hooks you in. As a matter of fact, that's why there's the term called FOMO, fear of missing out. This is the loss aversion bias actually kicking in. So in this video, I want to talk about three main things. First, how does loss aversion show up in your world, in your conversations, so you can be aware of it and you can leverage this as an opportunity to better present options and your conversations when you're talking to customers, and you can help them make decisions faster. The second thing I would talk about is how do you ask specific types of questions and how do you frame types of recommendations and statements where you can leverage the loss aversion effect in a way where it's in service for your clients. And I'm going to give you some specific examples that you can leverage. And then lastly, we're actually going to go over some simple swaps. What language you want to use versus language you don't want to use. That way you're more effective when you are communicating with customers. Remember, everything here is all about exactly what to say, right? The language that you're using to better present the value of your services and to better connect with your customers. So let's get started. So let's talk about where this shows up in your actual conversation. So that dreaded objection that shows up for everyone, which is, let me think about it. What's actually happening here is fear kicking in, right? They're uncertain. But uncertainty comes with fear. The fear that if they spend the money and they don't get the return that they want, the fear of if they make a change from a different service provider to you, and what if it doesn't work out? The fear of anything else that could happen that could be the wrong decision. So to your buyer, actually taking no action feels safer than making the wrong decision. This is the loss aversion kicking in. The second place where it shows up is in a budget objection. If they're saying this is too expensive, I can't afford it. What's actually happening here is, first of all, they're not seeing the value of your services, but they're also seeing the expense as a cost, which could potentially be a loss to them. So they're protecting their resources. They don't want their resources to go spent the wrong way. So the key takeaway here is understanding that loss aversion is being framed as a loss rather than an investment. And we need to quickly flip the script on that. The third way it shows up is actually if they ghost you. When a decision feels emotionally risky, the buyer may just go silent. It's easier to avoid discomfort than to face it head on. This is loss aversion disguised as avoidance. When we're selling change, we're typically asking for someone to give up something, whether it's control, comfort, routine, or the way that they're currently operating, before they can experience the benefit of it. Even if this change is logical, the decision is emotional. And the way you frame everything makes a whole world of difference. This is why it's so important to understand knowing exactly what to ask and exactly what to say in the right moments so that your customers can feel safe, they feel that they can trust you, and they know that you are doing this in service to help them benefit and achieve their desired future outcome. Now let's get tactical. How do you use loss aversion without coming off as manipulative? The first is reframing your value. Instead of focusing around what your service could add for them, maybe you can focus your attention on what they could lose from not taking action, right? What's the cost of inaction? So instead of saying, this will help you get more clients, try saying, well, if you don't change your processes, you might risk losing some of your clients. That could put someone into a place of feeling that fear of, well, if I don't stay competitive or if I don't improve my processes, competition is going to eat them up. And that's going to drive them to probably make a decision with more confidence. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and improve your workflows and your systems, instead say you're losing 10 plus hours a week due to your clunky processes. It's the same solution, but this time you're using urgency as an internal driver, and you're not creating pressure. You're actually showing them consequence, which makes them feel more responsible towards the decision that they're going to make. Another way for you to be able to frame loss aversion is actually asking really powerful questions. This is my favorite way of doing it. I'd rather not try to sell them or present things to them, but I'd rather ask them and make them think about it, right? It's like, if you do nothing in 6 months, what will change? The other thing is just try to expose what's already the cost of whatever their current situation is. So it's like, how much time, energy are you actually investing in this now? And how much is it costing you from not making any changes or fixing this? A third question that I really like is saying something like, what opportunities are you missing because you're not implementing these systems, because you're not fixing your current processes, because you're not enrolled to a type of service like mine? These kind of questions shift the conversation from price to risk. Instead of them asking, can I afford this? They're going to probably ask themselves, can I afford not to do this? Here's how you can actually handle an objection through the lens of risk. So let's just say that they say something like, oh, I can't afford this right now. Or you might say, well, I get it. It is a big investment, but what would be the cost if you took no action today? Again, what you're trying to do is help them understand the risk of not taking action. And that could be a good, smart way for them to keep that in the back of their mind. Even if they say no to you now, they're still gonna know that every day that they're working without a solution is a risk for them to potentially lose money or miss out on more business opportunities. Now, you could also reframe the way you present your price. Instead of saying this service is gonna be $5,000, you could say, this investment, $5,000, is going to help you save thousands of dollars on your other existing processes that are going to waste or not being used effectively. See, the reframe will help them see it more as a cost-saving investment rather than as an expense or a cost to hire you for your services. Since we know that loss aversion is about avoiding pain, rather than presenting all the time the aspirational goals or future desired state, you could do a simple swap, and instead of saying things like, here's what you're going to gain if you work with us, try to frame a lot of the solutions as, here's what you're going to save, here are the risks that you're going to minimize, here are the time savings, the money savings, because that could motivate most people to actually make that decision and move forward. Instead of saying, we're going to help you with all of your workflows and improve them, you could say, we're going to help you stop losing 10 hours plus per week of productivity. Again, it's the same work, but a different frame. So let's wrap up. Loss aversion is real. It shows up in every decision your buyer makes. It's gonna show up in hesitation, ghosting, and budget objections, especially when you're selling change. And third, you can reframe your sales language by making it more visible, helping them understand the risks of not taking action without coming off manipulative or adding any pressure. It's all about the way you frame it. This is how we sell with empathy, intentionality, and impact. Now drop a comment below and share with me what's your biggest takeaway from this video. And if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe, like, and share it with anyone that would benefit from learning this concept. Thanks, until next time.